it's with a heavy heart that I rise to request that the Assembly adjourn in the memory of my friend Marc Stirdivant. After graduating with both bachelor's and master's degrees from USC in cinema, Marc worked in the motion picture and television industry as a writer, production executive, and assistant director for over 30 years. But in 2004, he traded that successful career to become a full-time environmentalist. Marc was the founding director of the Glendale Crescenta Volunteers, Organized in Conserving the Environment, or VOICE, and grew the organization from a handful of individuals to a powerhouse of nearly 4,000 donors, supporters, and volunteers. With Marc's help, these activists helped preserve a very large hillside in Glendale from out-of-scale and inappropriate development. For decades, his advocacy focused on the protection and preservation of open space. He served on the advisory committee of the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy and on the board of directors for the Bolsa Chica Land Trust. Not one to put his feet up in retirement, he worked for years for the city of Glendale and secured over $17 million worth of funding through 15 grants to support local parks and community centers. And I can tell you, as someone who has brought her daughter many times to different events in the parks and gone myself, it was hard to go to an event in Glendale featuring one of our parks and not have Marc Stirdivant there volunteering in his off hours to help out. For the past 12 years, Marc worked tirelessly in the fight to save the Verdugo Hills Golf Course in the Tujunga neighborhood of Los Angeles. The course is the site of the former La Tuna Canyon Detention Center, which housed more than 3,000 Japanese, Italians, Germans, and Peruvians of Japanese descent after the onslaught of World War II. From the Maple Park and Community Center to Dugmagian Park and the Glendale Narrows Riverwalk, Marc transformed our region and ensured that generations of Californians have access to an incredible array of outdoor activities. And Marc was someone that if you met him, you wouldn't realize that he had had his hand in so many of these important activities in the city. He was very quiet, very soft-spoken. He never called attention to himself. He never stood up in the public and really said, I'm the person behind any of this. He was just always kind of there. But he spent all of his time working on his passion of preservation and conservation. And if you really paid attention, you would see Marc's hand in all of these different organizations as a volunteer and as an activist and an organizer. It was really something to behold. He was very quiet and soft-spoken, but his voice carried a lot of weight and a lot of power. The community has lost an amazing advocate, an outstanding man. Our deepest condolences go out to his high school sweetheart and wife of nearly 49 years, Jeanette, his daughters Bethany and Kimberly, his son-in-law Roger, and grandson Sebastian, as well as his sister Jill. Marc will be missed not just by me and the community in Glendale, but also by the mountains and the rivers, the hawks and the mountain lions that he worked so hard to protect. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman. And Mr. Nazarian, you are also recognized on this adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to also rise in recognizing Marc Stirdivant. My colleague from Glendale spoke very eloquently. Marc was a dear friend. I had the opportunity to get to know him when the Glendale community, the greater Glendale community, activated and began their work in purchasing. The state at the time made a major investment in purchasing portions of Oakmont 5 property. And that's when I started to get to know Marc and work with him. And as amazed as I was with his work on Fraser for about 10 years, as my colleague previously alluded, the humility and the humor that he brought to any room or any working group was amazing. And as you know, given his background in production, you could also see how focused he was in making sure, with a very soft voice, pushing projects and programs forward with a very kind and gentle smile that was extremely disarming. So my love to Jeanette, and Kimberly, and Bethany, and thank you for joining and adjourning his memory.